Joining us now to break down President Zelenskyy's remarks is Paul Kane. He's a congressional reporter for the Washington Post. And Paul, welcome. What did you think of the Ukrainian president painting a picture of what's going on in his country, especially that powerful video he showed lawmakers and that our correspondent, MTS Taya, was referencing?
Yeah, he did make the point that is what members of Congress sort of immediately walked out and started talking about. The speech itself was powerful, but look, members of Congress, they're older and they're dealing with a translator, and so what really stuck out to them was the video and just seeing the before and after pictures. That really drove home the point of what they were looking for. Now, Zelenskyy has been effective already with Congress. A couple Saturdays ago, he did a Zoom call with upwards of about 300 members of Congress who were able to try and get on the call. And he was a very effective lobbyist for his own government. And they were in the middle of trying to put together an initial security and refugee set of aid. It was originally going to be about $6 billion. By the time that call was done 2 Saturdays ago, they got to $13.6 billion. Now, what Zelensky's asking for now is more military aid, not just refugee aid. He wants weapons.
And he specifically also wants a no-fly zone. You mentioned, Paul, how he used soaring oratory that maybe you didn't hear quite in the voice of the translator, but still you saw on his face. I want to play for our viewers a little bit about what he said in terms of a no-fly zone.
Is this a lot to ask for, to create a no-fly zone over Ukraine to save people? Is this too much to ask? Humanitarian no-fly zone.
Paul, let's talk about the significance of the use of the word humanitarian in terms of a no-fly zone. Might that make a difference in terms of how palatable it is to the White House?
It may. Tom Malinowski is a Democratic congressman from northern New Jersey, and he used to work in the State Department in the Obama administration. He had a very interesting take when he came out of that meeting. He basically said that it's a sort of the high ask is the no-fly zone right now, and Zelenskyy knows that that's going to likely be rejected, but he's coming in underneath asking for specific anti-aircraft weaponry from the West, from the U.S. and other NATO allies. So while he's trying for a no-fly zone, that would be his #1 request, he knows that deep down the Pentagon will probably not agree to that because of the potential for ratcheting up the conflict directly with Russia. But instead, he will happily take a lot of other anti-aircraft missiles, weapons, tanks, the type of stuff that they can use to, while they don't have the jets themselves to go up and fight in the Russian aircraft, it's something that can really help bolster their defenses.
And we've gone through this list of what President Zelenskyy is asking from the U.S. government: humanitarian aid, more security assistance. He also called for a new package of sanctions to punish all Russian politicians. How much of all of these do you think he can really get?
Well, right now, the members of Congress that came out afterward and started talking to reporters, they're ready to sanction everybody. They basically said they would sanction every Russian Federation official, whether it's part of their parliament or on down to their staff. But it is still going to be something that will be led by the White House, by the administration. And that it sometimes looks a little bit slower than Congress wants, but that's because this White House is trying to bring Europe along with them. They're trying to do all of these things in a coordinated fashion that looks and presents to Putin that this is a united Western front against him. They believe that's the most important thing, the unity among all NATO and European allies, so that he does not feel like he's seeing the cracks within that line of defense.
Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.